Happy Tuesday, 7th grade. So our focus for today is characters. We've looked at plot, all of the elements and all of the pieces of the story from the conflict onwards. It's the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action to the resolution, the new normal. So we've looked at the plot. Our focus now is going to be on characters. So if you have your worksheet 2, which has all of these beautiful notes to study, at the very bottom, you'll notice a few notes on character. That's what we're looking at today. So generally speaking, when we talk about characters, we talk about, are they flat or are they round? So if you're thinking of a flat character, think of kind of like a flat paper plate, okay? They may take up a whole lot of room, but there's not a whole lot to them. So in general, flat characters might appear throughout the whole story, but we don't learn a lot about them. There's not a lot of depth to them, if that makes sense. They're just kind of there. If you have a round character, okay, that takes up a lot more, and there's more depth to that kind of character. A round character is going to be more interesting, generally speaking, because we're going to learn more about what they think, about what they feel. Okay, so a flat character, we don't learn very much. We get very surface with a flat character. With a round character, we get a more full picture. Okay, on your notes, obviously, it says flat is one-sided, so it's not fully developed. A round character is fully developed. We get a good mental picture of what this character is like. So flat, round. Okay, next we have either a static character or dynamic. So static, if you can picture it, is just kind of the same the whole time. Static, nothing's changing. Okay, so for that type of character, they don't tend to learn anything, at least in that story. The way they start is the way they finish. There's no change to the character. Okay? A dynamic character does change. They learn, they grow, they might get a new perspective on something. So in general, the dynamic character is going to be the one that's most interesting. Now, having a flat character, having a static character can be an okay thing. In Sherlock Holmes stories, and of course I love my mysteries, you have the character of Dr. Watson. Dr. Watson stands next to Holmes the entire time, and he writes down all of the case notes, and they live together as roommates, and all the time that Holmes does these amazing things, he's like, "You astonish me. You astonish me. How did you figure that out?" He doesn't change a whole lot. Even when he gets married, he still kind of hangs out with Holmes, so he doesn't change a lot. He's fairly flat. He's pretty static. He doesn't change. The character of Sherlock Holmes is very round. There's a lot of interesting things to Sherlock Holmes. In general, he's an actor, so sometimes he'll get all dressed up to pretend to be someone and go out and do things. He learns. He has kind of this opinion that ladies can't do a whole lot and that they're nothing to his vast intellect. And then he gets tricked by a woman. And so he learns this appreciation. He has a change in how he views, in particular, one woman, Irene Adler. All of these are examples of static, where it's the same all the time. They don't learn anything, versus someone who does learn, who does change. Okay? So those are the main type of characters. The very last one that you'll see at the bottom are stock characters. So these are stereotypes. And I'm going to actually have you take a look back up into your types of drama. I'm going to do a little sidetrack just to give these terms to you so that you know them when they come up on a quiz in about a week and a half or so. In drama, particularly in melodrama, you would have stereotype or stock characters. So these characters aren't really unique, aren't really individual, but they're types that everyone is familiar with. So, for example, stereotypes that you might see within a school are, oh, the jock, the athletic one, the cheerleader, the brainy one, or things like that. That might be a kind of high school more stereotype. Stereotypes that you would see in a melodrama type of play might be a villain, and they would have the mustache and they would do the curly things. You would have the hero always wearing the white hat, and you would have the ladies always sighing, the heroine, the one who has to get rescued all the time. So these are characters that are not going to be round. They're not going to be dynamic. They're not going to learn anything. The bad guy never learns the lesson. It's stereotypical. These are flat characters, very static, but they're very commonplace. So stock characters are stereotypes. Okay? That's the last of the characters. I'll talk a little bit more about the drama just since I've got you here for this video, and today is a slightly shorter lesson. So types of drama that we'll see, again, going big scale, you have poetry, drama, prose. Mostly we're looking at prose, but just to talk a little bit about drama, you have comedies. Comedies obviously are to make you laugh. So it's a play that's often humorous situations, humorous words, humorous characters. Okay, its purpose is to make people laugh. It generally has a happy ending. You will have tragedies, and as the name suggests, that has a sad type ending. So here it might be because the character has a huge flaw. They're proud, they're arrogant, and so it leads to this downfall. In one of Shakespeare's famous plays, Othello, his downfall is jealousy. Someone starts whispering, oh, your wife is having an affair. Oh, she's dirty, dirty, dirty. Well, he gets so crazed with jealousy, he kills his own wife. And then finds out, oh no, none of it was true. She was perfectly faithful the entire time. That's the tragedy. It has a sad ending, okay? Often has a relation to some kind of flaw in the character where they don't make a good choice. Okay, we just talked melodramas. Those are over-exaggerated acting with a clear division of good and evil. So stock characters would include the hero, the villain, the heroine. Sometimes you'll have a comic sidekick as well. So again, not very developed characters, but very recognizable characters. And the very last one they would say is a tragic comedy. So here it's a humorous play that does have some elements of tragedy to it. Some of the more modern or realistic plays might tend to be a tragic comedy. So, or sometimes even called a dark comedy, where it's technically kind of a happy ending, but it's still a bit bittersweet. Okay, so that is our look at characters, a little bit of look at drama, just for a bonus while we're at it. Okay, so now that we're talking characters, one of the things we talked about with characters back with our mythology unit was looking at character traits. So character traits, remember, are not the physical elements of a character because those can change. Mrs. Kirschman at almost 40 looks very different than Mrs. Kirschman 10 years ago or 20 or 30 years ago. Similar, but not quite the same. So when you're talking about character traits, you're talking about the personality or the bits about this character that are shown through their actions, dialogue, relationships, choices, and their problems. And if I had my beautiful poster, I would hang it up. Hopefully you still have your beautiful bookmarks. Okay, but that's what we're talking about with character traits. So for today, I get to read you a story called The Sweetest Fig. This is by Chris Van Allenberg. This is the same author who wrote Jumanji. So this story, we're going to take a look at one of the main characters and see if we can figure out a few things about his personality traits. Let me get in good position so hopefully you can still see. All right, here we go. Okay. He's got a fig, The Sweetest Fig, by Chris Van Allsburg. Monsieur Bibot, the dentist, was a very fussy man. He kept his small apartment as neat and clean as his office. If his dog Marcel jumped on the furniture, Bibo was sure to teach him a lesson. Except on Bastille Day, the poor animal was not even allowed to bark. One morning, Bibo met an old woman waiting at his office door. She had a toothache and begged the dentist to help. "But you have no appointment," he told her. The woman moaned. Bibo looked at his watch. Perhaps there was time to make a few extra francs. He took her inside and looked in her mouth. "This tooth must come out," he said with a smile. When he was done, the dentist said, "I will give you some pills to kill the pain." The old woman was very grateful. "I can't pay you in money," she said, "but I have something much better." She took 2 figs from her pocket and handed them to Bibo. "Figs?" he said angrily. "These figs are very special," she said. "They can make your dreams come true." She winked at him and put her finger to her lips. It was clear to Bibo that the woman was crazy. He set the figs down, took her by the arm. When she reminded him about the pills, he said, "I'm sorry, only for paying customers," and showed her out of the door. We'll wait 1 second while my husband answers the phone. Hello, Mr. Kirschman.
Hello.
That evening, Bibo took his little dog to the park. Poor Marcel loved to sniff the tree trunks and bushes, but whenever he stopped, Bibo would just pull sharply on the leash. Just before going to bed, the dentist had a small snack. He sat at his dining room table and ate one of the figs the old woman had given him. It was delicious, possibly the finest, sweetest fig he had ever had. In the morning, Bibo dragged Marcel down the stairs for his morning walk. The steep steps were hard for the short-legged dog, but Bibo wouldn't think of carrying his pet. He hated to get Marcel's white hairs on his beautiful blue suit. As he walked along the sidewalk, Bibo could not help noticing people looking at him. "They're admiring my suit," he thought. But when Bibo saw his reflection in the window of the cafe, he stopped in horror. He was dressed only in his underwear. Ooh. The dentist turned and ran into an alley. "Sacre bleu," he thought. "What has happened to my clothes?" Then he remembered the dream he had had last night. In his dream, he stood in front of that very cafe dressed in his underwear. Something else had happened in his dream, and Bibo struggled to recall it. Marcel, looking out from the shadows of the alley, began to bark. The dentist looked up and saw the rest of his dream come true. No one noticed Bibo as he ran home in his underwear. All the eyes of Paris were fixed on the Eiffel Tower, which slowly dropped over as if it were made of soft rubber. Bibo understood now that the old woman with the figs had told him the truth. He would not waste the second fig. Over the next few weeks, as reconstruction of the Eiffel Tower began, the dentist read dozens of books on hypnotism. Each night before he went to sleep, he gazed into a mirror and whispered over and over, "Bibo is the richest man on earth. Bibo is the richest man on earth." Soon in his dreams, that's exactly what he was. As he slept, the dentist saw himself steering his speedboat, flying his aeroplane, and living in luxury on the Riviera. Night after night, it was the same. One evening, Bibo took the second fig from his cupboard. It would not last forever. Tonight, he thought, is the night. He put the ripe fruit on a dish and he set it on his table. Tomorrow he would wake up the richest man in the world. He looked down at Marcel and smiled. The little dog would not be coming along. In his dreams, Bibo had Great Danes. As the dentist reached into his cupboard to take out some cheese, he heard the crash of breaking china. He turned to see Marcel standing on a chair with his front paws on the table, chewing the last of the fig. Bibo was furious. He chased the dog around the apartment. When Marcel ran beneath the bed, Bibo yelled at him, Tomorrow I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Then the dentist, angry and heartbroken, went to sleep. When he woke up the next morning, Bibo was confused. He was not in his bed. He was beneath it. Suddenly, a face appeared in front of him. His own face. Time for your walk, it said. Come to Marcel. A hand reached out and grabbed him. Bibo tried to yell, but all he could do was bark. So, I hope you enjoyed this story. It's obviously a very silly story about him turning eventually into a dog because that was the dog's dream come true. Okay, but let's talk about character traits really quick. So, character traits can be both positive things and they can be negative things. In this case, what are some of the positive characteristics of Bibo? Okay, we see one, he's a fairly hard worker. He's willing to go ahead and take the woman in just so that he can make money. Okay, so hard worker, or possibly, if we went to the other side, he's greedy for money. That might be a more negative trait. Okay, the fact that ultimately his dream is to be the richest man in the world shows that kind of greediness that he has. Some other characteristic traits. He was determined. So once he knew what he wanted, he tried to figure out a way to get it. He learned about hypnotism. He prepped himself for many nights to try and make his dream come true. So being determined can be a very positive type quality. Okay, what are some of the negative qualities about him? Okay, I would say very unkind. We see that in the way that he treats his dog, Marcel, the fact that he won't carry him because he cares more about how he looks. The fact that he intends to get rid of him as soon as he's wealthy enough. All of these kind of go and show that just very unkind. I could also even say selfish. The fact that he cares more about himself than the creatures. The fact that once he finds out the old woman can't pay, he won't give her pills. So that goes again to that unkindness, that selfishness where he's not concerned for others. The last one I think I would include is vain. So again, he thinks a lot about himself, particularly his appearance. So the fact that he wouldn't dare to get any hairs on his suit shows just how much he thinks about himself, particularly his outer appearance. Okay, so these are some of our character traits, things that are more on the inside of a character based on what they say, what they think, what they do, how they act with others, how they face problems. All right, ladies, you have a worksheet to kind of go through. This worksheet will focus on yesterday's story, last cover, and that's going to challenge you to kind of think about what these characters were like in that story, and were they round or flat, dynamic or static. Have a great Tuesday.